For the past year or so, I have been voicing my opinions regarding Amphibia, The Owl House, Molly McGee, Disney TVA, Pixar, Inside Out 2, Dreamworks, and even Transformers 1, just to name some of the topics highlighted on this channel. It has been quite a ride, and I thank you all for listening to my ramblings for the past year. But one thing I should make clear is that much of my opinions were shaped in part by opinions and arguments from you guys. So in honor of your guys' support, I thought it'd be great to highlight your opinions once again before the year ends. Of course, due to time constraints, I can't read every comment or tweet you guys wrote. Also, I hate to say this, but many of your hot takes are actually pretty cold. But with that, here are the hot takes that I personally thought were the most interesting. Alright, let's start with the first hot take, in which the commenter writes, Illumination is overhated. Yep, that's where we're starting, I guess. I feel like this comment is meant to be a response to the videos I made where I sort of trashed Illumination for making mid-films. Look, I understand that most Illumination films are fun and entertaining, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying them. Like I said, Despicable Me 1 and 2 were actually really good, entertaining films that have some heart put into them. I guess the reason why I'm so hard on Illumination is because they haven't made a movie that has matched those two movies in levels of enjoyment for me. The Lorax was meh, Sing was meh, Secret Life of Pets felt like a meh version of Toy Story. The only recent Illumination film that came close to that level of enjoyment was the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which was mainly carried by the fact that it was, well, Mario. To be fair, I haven't watched every Illumination film, so there might be a chance that I'd enjoy their other films like Migration and Minions 2, but I'm not gonna set my expectations that high, to be honest. Although, as much as I ranted and dismissed the studio, I will give credit for at least one thing they did. As far as I know, they are the only animation studio that has actually came out against the use of AI. They even mocked the use of it in one of their ads for Despicable Me 4. Now, there is a chance they might back away from that, and they may end up using AI in the long term, thus making any praise for them age like milk. But hey, at least they are walking the walk for now, and haven't gone out of their way to try to use AI wherever possible. Overall, I kind of agree with the comment, at least when it comes to devoted animation fans who watch videos like this, but I do think general viewers should give Illumination more scrutiny and stop giving them as much money as they should. I guess I would be less harsh on the studio if their movies didn't beat movies like The Wild Robot in the box office. That brings us rather neatly to the next hot take, in which the commenter essentially says, The Wild Robot movie is overrated, while the book series it was based on is underrated. I didn't read any of the books, so I can't say how good they actually are, although I imagine they are at least pretty good. With the movie though, I don't know if I would say it's overrated. For the most part, people that I know who watched the movie, both online and in real life, really enjoyed the movie and say it's one of the best films of the year. Personally, after watching the movie a couple of times, there's still nothing inherently wrong about it that I could point out. Although, if you were to ask me if this was the best movie of the year for me, then I would actually say no. That title would still go to Inside Out 2 in my opinion. I don't know if that's a hot take for you guys, but in my view, The Wild Robot was an amazing film in nearly every metric, but unlike Inside Out 2, where it has moments that stuck in my mind for long periods of time after watching it, The Wild Robot didn't have that. Now this could be explained by the fact that most of the film was so good to a point where you can't really pinpoint a moment that was iconic, or the fact that immediately after watching The Wild Robot, I also watched Transformers 1, which had its fair share of iconic moments and overshadowed The Wild Robot in my mind. At least for personally, I mean, obviously The Wild Robot kind of did the opposite, it did overshadow Transformers 1. Whatever the case was, The Wild Robot was excellent, but it didn't give me that mental euphoria for as long as Inside Out or even Transformers 1 did. Overall, do I think The Wild Robot was overrated? To some extent, kind of. This could be my Pixar bias speaking, but I do genuinely find more enjoyment from their film this year compared to Dreamworks. Although it is quite a close call, because it is still one of the best movies of the year in my opinion. I mean, the animation quality alone puts this movie close to the top, and for some, it's the only form of 3D animation they can appreciate. I guess that leads us to the next hot take, where the commenter writes how they don't like 3D animation and can only appreciate it if it has 2D elements like what Spider-Verse or The Wild Robot did. So flat out, I disagree with the comment, but I can respect it. It's pretty much just a preference in art style at the end. I can see why people would like the 2D, 3D hybrid art style of animation. It looks pleasing to the eye, and more significantly, it's a refreshing new approach to how animated movies look. And I'd like to see more movies adopted in some form. That being said, I wouldn't say it's inherently better than normal CG 3D animation that Pixar popularized. I don't know about you guys, but I do find it impressive that Pixar and other studios were able to push the boundaries with 3D animation and make movies that look aesthetically realistic while still looking very clearly animated with real artists behind it. I do understand that it's been overused at this point, which explains the sentiment against 3D animation for fans nowadays. But I like how Pixar at least are still trying to push the medium forward in their view. I just hope that everyone acknowledges that it's great to have a wide variety of animation styles, from traditional 2D to CG 3D to a hybrid style to even stop motion animation. Alright, so let's go ahead with another hot take. Let's see. Oh, here's one. This one says, all 5 Ice Age films are the greatest films of all time.
You serious?
Yeah, agree to disagree there. But in all seriousness, the first Ice Age was great, the second and third movies were good, the fourth one was meh, and the fifth one did not need to exist. I mean, there's a reason why there hasn't been a new Ice Age movie since 2016. Oh, okay. Moving on. Alright, the next hot take is actually coming from 2 different comments, but they're pretty similar enough that I can address them both at once. Christoph writes, newer shows, with a few exceptions, are too sensitive nowadays, and Martin writes how animation should cover more complex serious topics like death, war, diseases, etc. Both commenters essentially are saying that animated shows and movies should be more willing to show controversial topics and themes. On one hand, yes, I do agree that animated movies and shows should do that, including content for younger viewers. I guess the one part of the take that I disagree with though is that animated content never really stopped being controversial. I mean, just look at some of the most popular shows in recent years, like Amphibia and The Owl House for example, which are of course the 2 shows that I've been covering for the past couple years. Those shows can get serious and dark, almost to a point where even adults can get disturbed by them. Now, you may say they are the exception rather than the rule. Okay, let's look at the Ghost and Molly McGee. That show is undeniably more lighthearted compared to the 2 shows I mentioned, but it still covers pretty important, serious topics that you don't normally expect a kids show to cover, from working class struggles, to community building, to literally how to live life to the fullest. Also, even though we don't think it's a dark show, Molly McGee can still have some rather dark humor, which I guess is easy to do given the show's premise involves ghosts, death, and the supernatural. I mean, they had one episode where one of the main child characters died for a joke. Keep in mind, this is supposed to be one of the more silly shows that Disney made, and we know Disney can be a stickler when it comes to showing more mature content. So I'd imagine that other animated shows have covered dark themes and made those edgy jokes too, sometimes to a detriment. Looking at you, Has-Been Hotel. Now, shows are one thing, but what about animated movies? Well, the same thing. I never thought these movies stopped covering dark, serious topics. I mean, the most popular movie of 2024 literally showed the main character go through an anxiety attack to prove a point. So yeah, I do want animation to cover these serious themes, but I'd argue they never really stopped doing that, even with big major studios being more strict nowadays. I guess one thing we can agree on is that major studios should let creators of these shows and movies have more control over them to cover these dark themes more often. But that is probably one of the coldest takes we can have. Alright, so aside from YouTube, there are some interesting takes that I got from Twitter as well. Atros asked that we should broaden our horizons beyond children's animation and give adult animation a chance. Not every cartoon is a Family Guy clone. Admittedly, I almost dismissed this comment for the tone, but I'll address it anyway just because I have actually been watching some adult animated shows recently. In fact, one of the shows I've been watching a lot recently in my downtime is Futurama, which is one of the shows the person recommended. I'll save more of my thoughts on the show for a later video, so subscribe to the channel if you want to hear me ramble about Futurama more fully. Now, I have only watched about half of this show as of this point, but I gotta say, I have been enjoying it a lot so far. I really like the premise of the show, I love the characters, the humor, the sci-fi themes, even the emotional moments, and so much more. Oh, and the theme song too. That is probably one of its best aspects, and frankly, you can get me to watch any show if it has a banger of an opening theme. Honestly, I wished I watched the show sooner, but better late than never. That being said though, I do still have some reservations for adult animated shows. I could have been unlucky with the adult shows I watched, but as far as I've seen, they overemphasize the crude humor and the swearing kind of like as if they're trying to make it clear they are for adults only, which I think is kinda dumb. But after seeing Futurama and acknowledging that adult cartoons can still be clearly for older viewers without the excessive swearing and such, I am definitely open to watching more adult cartoons like the ones listed. So yeah, I'll definitely get around to watching more adult animated content in the near future. The next hot take sort of ties into the previous one to some extent. Jin writes, I think animation in general should have an age restriction, but not an age limit, if that makes any sense.
That doesn't make any sense!
But for real though, I think I know where Jin is getting at. I'm assuming they mean that animated content can and should be clearly designated for certain age demographics. For example, it's okay to mark shows like, say, Bluey as kids shows. Even though there is a cult following among older viewers for Bluey, you can't deny that the creators of the show intended to show it to younger viewers. On the opposite end of the spectrum, there are certain shows that are clearly for adults like Hazbin Hotel, and there's definitely nothing wrong with gatekeeping it from younger viewers. If anything, I think that should be the right thing to do. Although, that doesn't mean parents are right to call for its cancellation. The show is clearly not for kids, and parents who don't acknowledge that certain cartoons are for adults only need a reality check. As for other shows that fall in between though, like Amphibia, The Owl House, Gravity Falls, even The Amazing Digital Circus, and a bunch of others, I don't really think there should be any designation for what demographic those shows appeal to. A young adult has every right to watch Gravity Falls, as does the 11-year-old kid that the show was marketed towards. Now, watching a certain show is one thing. As for interacting within fan communities of these shows though, problems can definitely arise there, although that's a whole can of worms entirely. So yeah, I don't know if this is a hot take at all. To me, this take is perfectly reasonable, especially for shows explicitly meant for the very young viewers and full-grown adult viewers. As for the content in between, I feel like they should just be given the standard G rating that a lot of shows and movies used to get. So basically make rated G mean what it's supposed to be, so everyone can watch it. Okay, so given time, I'll do one more hot take, and this one is most likely the spiciest take yet. The commenter writes, AI could be the best thing to ever happen to animation. Okay, so not gonna lie, I was thinking about ignoring this tweet entirely because I feel like this is a troll trying to trigger me. If it is, then fine, I'll take the bait. This is just a flat out wrong opinion. If you mean it will be good for the executives of animated companies, then yeah, maybe you'll probably be right. But for actual animators and creators, I don't see the positive vision at all. Aside from taking away the actual feeling and emotion with creating something, AI's purpose up to this point is to replace people, not assist them into making something completely new. A lot of tech bros bring up how in the 1990s, animators were against the adoption of computers for making animated content. It's the reason why Pixar at the time went from selling computers to animation studios to making their own in-house animations with the computers they created. And sure enough, Pixar went on to dominate the animation industry with their movies, causing other animation studios to follow in their footsteps. And today, computers are used to make the vast majority of animation you see on a daily basis. So yeah, it is true that more advanced technology has led to revolutions in animation, but there's so much wrong with this comparison. With the Pixar example, their computers are what enabled artists to create animations involving 3D models, which is something that was impossible to do with traditional animation techniques. It also made 2D animated content look more refined. But more importantly, none of these new tech reduced the amount of human input needed to produce the work of art. Meanwhile, AI has not produced anything that was not theoretically possible before with actual human artists that use a pen and paper or regular computers. All that AI has done as of this point is take works of art from actual human artists and jumble it together to create a quote-unquote unique work of art. Now, AI tech pros may say that human artists do the same thing. I mean, creators get inspiration somewhere for their work of art. But saying this phenomenon is the same as a machine learning algorithm taking in information that was fed to them without the original artist's consent, by the way, is utter nonsense, and frankly misses the point of doing art.
Bender, you have a lovely baritone, and you sure can strum that plastic guitar. But you can't write a real folk song about experiences you haven't had.
Creators do what they do because they have certain feelings and thoughts they want to express, and this results in unique pieces of work that you as an individual can claim. A machine can't do that because it has no actual experiences, feelings, or intent behind the products they produced. They just did it because they are programmed to do so. Also, don't get me started with the fact that AI can still produce images with painfully obvious mistakes. Although admittedly, it has gotten so much better and it's to a point where it can replace certain people's production process. But that's the reason why I think AI will be terrible for animators and creators. It's inherently designed to replace humans to do something that we actually want to do. At least that's how it is being made right now. But even if we assume that AI gets better to a point where it does produce something that no human can produce, how is that exactly good for the animation industry? Again, it'll probably be good for executives and consumers who don't know better, but it will be terrible for the actual artists who are now unemployed, all because the companies are trying to make a quick buck for their shareholders. Now, I can go on and on about this topic alone. In fact, I have partially written up a script for a video about this topic, but I'll just leave it at that for now. So yeah, that is all of the hot takes I had time to react for today. And yeah, you guys definitely have a fair amount of interesting opinions. If you forgot to comment your hot take, don't worry, I will do this again sometime in the coming year, which at this point is not that far away. If you want to know when that comes out, you can give this video a like and subscribe for more content like this. With all that said, thank you all for watching this video and supporting this channel for the past year. I hope you all had an excellent 2024. See you all in the next year.